Has anyone ever told you, why are you still looking up information on narcissistic abuse? Or why are you still talking about it? What does it matter? Move on, get over it. Has anyone ever said that to you? Have you even wondered within yourself, like, why am I still struggling with this? Maybe you notice that you've had difficult relationships in the past, but you were able to move on after them. But you notice that for some reason, this relationship is different. And it's scary to look at yourself and wonder, like, why is this still affecting me for so long? Well, if anyone has ever told you any of those things, or you've felt that way yourself, you're going to want to watch this video. I'm going to talk about 5 real reasons as to why it is impossible to simply pick up and move on after narcissistic abuse as if it was any other relationship. So with that in mind, for those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a life and relationship coach. I'm also the founder of the Thriver School of Transformation. I put out a lot of free and affordable resources for people that want to dive deeper. So make sure you check out the description box and see if anything resonates with you. Okay, so let's get into those 5 things. And by the way, these 5 things aren't so that you go and try to convince other people, because that can sometimes be the tendency, especially if you've been through narcissistic abuse. And that usually comes from being around people or being raised by people that never allowed you to have your reality. So you wind up feeling like you always have to prove yourself. Well, these 5 things that I want to give you, these 5 reasons, I should say, are not because I want you to have information to help others to believe you, but I want you to believe you. I want you to see your truth and hold on to it, no matter what other people think. So the first reason why it's impossible to simply pick up as if it was any other relationship and move on is because narcissistic abuse causes you to walk on eggshells. In fact, if you relate to that term, if you walked on eggshells in your relationship, whether it was growing up or with a significant other, let me know in the description box below. What that phrase means, walking on eggshells, means that you are constantly on, like you are constantly at a heightened state of anxiety, because you never know when the other person's going to get angry. You never know what's going to happen. And so you are always in your fight or flight. I did a workshop not too long ago. I'll leave the link here for the recording to that. But in that workshop, we talked about how research has shown that in order to be healthy emotionally and physically, we need to be living in our parasympathetic nervous system 80% of the time, at least, or more. Well, narcissistic abuse puts you in your sympathetic nervous system, or your fight or flight, 80% of the time or more. And that creates a lot of problems physically as well as emotionally. But the reason why it makes it hard to move on after, and I just want to focus on that aspect of it for this video, is it's very much like, imagine if somebody tampered with your brakes on your car. Okay, they tampered with your brakes and now your brakes don't work. You may have figured out that they tampered with them. You have that knowledge, you have that understanding, but you're not going to just let the car sit out in the driveway or in the garage and then get in the car 6 months later thinking that now everything is fine, because it's obvious that just because you know what they did doesn't mean that it's going to fix itself on its own. You have to go get those brakes fixed. Well, it's the same thing with our nervous system. Once our nervous system has been tampered with and it has been changed because of the chronic abuse, it does not spring back and go to how it used to be without help from you. And that's why the myth, time heals all wounds, does not apply to narcissistic abuse. Okay, if you don't fix what was tampered with, you can stay stuck in the symptoms that the toxic person put you in, even if they have been out of your life for years. Okay, so keep that in mind. Number 2 is the fact that narcissistic abuse plants very negative and limiting beliefs in the soil of your subconscious mind. Okay, they penetrate your subconscious mind. And I've done videos on this, on how they do that. I'll save that information. If you want more information on how they do that, let me know in the comment section. But again, for the sake of this video, I'm focusing on why a person stays stuck. So they plant these beliefs in your subconscious mind. Some of those beliefs are, I'm not lovable, I'm unworthy, I'm not enough, I'm going to fail, nothing I do is good enough, no matter how hard I try, I'm never enough, no one believes me, it's my fault, I'm responsible for their feelings, I'm responsible for other people's happiness, I'm a bad person, I'm selfish. And I could go on and on and on, because sadly, they plant so many negative and limiting beliefs. Now, I want you to think about a garden. Let's say you have this gorgeous garden and you are an amazing gardener, right? And you have this beautiful garden and somebody comes along and plants weeds. Okay, this is very biblical right now. But let's just say somebody comes along and they plant things in your garden. You learn about it. You see it, you acknowledge it, you understand it. That's all fine and dandy, but that's not going to bring your garden back to how you want it. You actually have to do something. You have to first make sure that that person can no longer have access to your garden. And then you have to go in and remove what they put in that you didn't want there, right? Just leaving your garden alone is not going to allow it to somehow go back to how you originally had it. Action is needed. And it's the same thing with narcissistic abuse. The beliefs that they put in you are not going to atrophy. They're not going to go away on their own. That's the thing. Once they're in our subconscious mind is designed to make our reality happen, right? So the beliefs that are there, our subconscious mind doesn't have an opinion about, like our conscious mind does. Our conscious mind will be like, oh, that's a good belief, that's a bad belief. Our subconscious mind doesn't do that. It's just like, oh, Michele believes this. Let me point out things that help her to see that this is her reality. Michele believes she's unworthy. So let's say I do something that's would make me feel proud of myself. My subconscious mind won't even let me look at it. I'll be like, skip that. Look at how you failed over there, Michele. Focus on that because that's in alignment with your subconscious belief. And now our own subconscious is finishing the job that the narcissist started. If you do nothing. That's why people struggle with how they feel about themselves. No matter how long or how much time, I should say, passes that they're out of the relationship, if they don't acknowledge this and they don't do the work to work through their subconscious mind and weed out all of those limiting beliefs. And it takes time, and it takes effort and it takes energy. And sometimes it's frustrating. It's frustrating to think that you have to do so much after a toxic relationship just to get yourself back to who you are. But guess what? You're worth it. And that's what you have to start realizing. Number 3, another reason why people get stuck is because narcissistic abuse creates or teaches you to be stuck in things like rumination. Rumination is where your mind is going over things over and over in a circle about what happened, why it happened, but it never finds a solution. Because with narcissistic abuse, like nothing makes sense. So because nothing made sense when you were with the narcissist and our brain is designed to make sense out of things, it was always replaying everything over and over, trying to figure it out. And since the solutions really don't make sense and they only cause so much more cognitive dissonance, then what happens is if you've been doing that for a long time, your brain stays stuck and it creates trauma loops. Okay, so a trauma loop is, let's say when you were with the narcissist, you were made to feel depressed. Okay, you were made to feel depressed in the morning because maybe, let's say you used to wake up happy, right? But since they hated happiness, they made sure that you changed and you woke up depressed now because the energy just was so horrible in the morning, right? So what will happen when we're in those trauma loops, okay, and how they get created, you'll wake up feeling depressed, even if you're not with a narcissist anymore, not because there's a reason to feel depressed as much as because your body, your subconscious mind, the chemicals in your body, they grew accustomed to waking up and feeling depressed. And so your body's loves habit. Your subconscious mind loves habit. So it's like, okay, Michele, 7 in the morning, time for you to be depressed. And it produces the chemicals of depression, not because I have a reason, but because I've been waking up like that for so long while with a narcissist that now it's just my body thinks it's helping me by just giving me those feelings. So what happens with our thoughts and our rumination? Because our body's producing these emotions, it communicates to the mind that you're depressed. And then the mind goes in a loop of all the reasons why you're depressed. And it will often go down the same roads of the same things that happened to you while you were with the narcissist. Oh, because this happened, and then that happened, and then they did this, and every time this happened, and this happened. So now your mind is now in harmony with your body. Now you're really depressed because now you're creating the thoughts that are in alignment with the chemicals that came up in your body, and now they're feeding off of each other. And then you're ruminating about the why this happened and what they did. And your brain is replaying all of the things that happened in the past, never reaching a solution and never reaching a direction. It's literally in a circle. Think about it. The next time your mind goes down one of those roads where it's talking and thinking and focusing on what was done to you, doesn't it just feed the negative emotion and stay in a loop? There's no resolution. There's no resolution and there's no direction as to, okay, that happened. Acknowledge and validate it. But now what? Even though that happened, what am I doing now? Who am I today? It doesn't ever shift in that direction on its own. And the reason is because when we've been thinking the same way for a long time, think of the pathways in your mind to certain thoughts as pathways in the jungle, right? The ones that are traveled down a lot are well-worn pathways. The ones that aren't traveled down, you don't even know it's a path. It's just the jungle. You don't even want to go there, right? It could be too scary and overwhelming to go in the jungle in a pathway that no one's traveled down. Well, your mind can kind of be like that. Like it goes down the thoughts that you've traveled the most. And if they are negative, your neurons, they just fly down there because it's a cleared pathway. In order to break out of rumination, in order to break out of trauma loops, you literally have to carve a new pathway in your mind to different thoughts. So again, it requires effort. These are things that you can't just let time handle. These are things that you have to actively take part in. You have to rewire your brain because it was rewired as a result of the abuse. Number 4 is you've kind of stopped being you for a long time. Or if you were raised by a narcissist as well, maybe you never had a you. Like you've always been trying to please other people that you don't even know who you are. But for those that had it before, and then they were in a relationship and they changed, they can look at themselves and be like, okay, I know I used to love to do this. I know that I used to love to do that. And it can be very confusing as to why am I not doing those things? For example, if you loved hiking, if you loved singing, if you loved a sport, an instrument, anything, whatever the hobby was that you loved, think about what happened to it during the relationship. Were you able to do the things that you loved? No. Not if you were with somebody high on the scale of malignant narcissism. And here's the hard part. This is the hard part. So what the narcissist does is they engage in something called coercive abuse. With coercive abuse, they make you feel like you have to make changes. On a subconscious level, they do this. It's not like they say this literally. And when you do make those changes, you are participating in changing yourself. You are actively taking part in it, and it changes you. You do change. So for example, let's say I'm reading a book and I love to read, right? And the narcissist constantly, in covert ways, makes you feel like you're doing something wrong. Like they may say something like, you're reading again, like all you do is read. What kind of spouse are you? I don't have a spouse. I have somebody that just sits there and reads. Now, of course, you're not doing anything wrong to take some time for yourself. but they make you feel as if you're doing something wrong. So if you stop and you feel this emotion inside of your body, like you feel that you're doing something wrong, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's shame. Every time you read a book and then you stop, you are being coercively conditioned to associate reading with something negative. And what happens is that you literally change how you feel on the inside. You literally stop doing the things that you love. You literally become a different person, or you become erased as to who you really are. And when that happens, again, this is something that we don't just spring back and just start being ourselves again, because our inner self has been conditioned to feel certain ways about things you used to love. Then you can almost feel like the person that stopped you from being you is out of your life. And yet now you are stopping you from being you because of these conditioned behaviors that are inside. And again, those are things that you have to work through. You have to take time to recondition yourself, to love what you really love, to be who you really are, to allow your authentic self that's kind of been put in a prison inside of you, to let him or her know that she can come out or he can come out and you're allowed to be you. And that takes time, and that takes effort and dedication to allowing yourself to get to that place again. And the last reason that I want to mention, and this list is in no specific order, but the last reason I want to mention is that narcissistic abuse causes you to stifle your emotions. Okay, so think about it. In childhood, if you were never allowed to be upset, right? You were never allowed, if somebody treated you wrong and you said, hey, that hurt my feelings, and you got in trouble for that, you learned quickly that feelings aren't safe. And so you began stifling your feelings. And along with stifling your feeling of being upset, you also had to stifle your fear of their anger, right? Because you couldn't say, when I express myself, you get angry and that scares me. If you had a narcissistic parent, you couldn't do that. In my workshop that I did a few weeks ago, we talked about how when we stifle our emotions, our brain rewires around them, very much like if a car gets into an accident, right? And let's say it first gets into the accident, before the cars can get cleaned up and taken out of the way of the road, there's a detour, right? There's a detour around it so that the flow of traffic can continue. That detour is supposed to be temporary. And obviously they have to clean up the cars so that the traffic can run smoothly. Well, in our mind, those detours become permanent if we keep those stifled emotions stifled. And the problem is that because they're stifled, right? They're not processed, they're not released, which means they're very much alive in our subconscious mind. So how that would show up is, let's say I had to stifle being afraid that somebody was angry, because when somebody was angry, if I had a toxic parent that was angry to a child, that's equivalent with their life is in danger, because that person's meant to take care of them. And who's going to take care of them if that parent is out of control, right? So that's a tremendous amount of fear associated with people being angry. Let's say that's stifled. I grow up and I'm entering relationships, right? And every time I'm in a relationship, whether it's a friend or a significant other, anytime I think somebody's going to get mad, or anytime I think that it's going to cause a disagreement, I stifle my own authenticity because I'm afraid they're going to get mad. I'm afraid that's going to mean abandonment. And I'm afraid that abandonment, it comes up in my body almost as if it's a life and death situation, as it was in childhood. Why? Because that life and death situation that I felt in childhood, because it's stifled, anytime somebody's angry or upset with me, it touches on that old stifled wound, and that comes up in my body. And what happens? I react. I am triggered. I can't be myself. I never feel grounded. I never feel safe because I have all of these things stifled in my nervous system, and they're coming up in other relationships. They're coming up at work. They're coming up in every aspect of my life. So in order to not be affected by the narcissistic relationship in the past, again, whether it was your parents, your caretaker, a sibling, or a significant other, in order to be able to move on, you have to go through the process of kind of cleaning out your nervous system. Your nervous system isn't going to clean out on its own, very much like a car accident isn't just going to clear up on its own, right? People have to put in the work to clear that pathway again. Well, we have to do that with the things that we've stifled in our subconscious mind, in our nervous system as well. And I know this sounds like a lot of work. It kind of is, it kind of is, because the toxic person in your life did a lot of damage. So I know some people will tell me, Michele, it's just not fair. Like, I have to do all this stuff for myself, and this person just moves on as if I never existed, and they're doing all this stuff, and I'm here healing myself. And I always try to encourage people to just look at the fact that they love themselves enough to do that, and that is the ultimate, I hate to use the word revenge, but people say that, they feel stuck forever and it's not fair. Well, if you don't want to feel like it's not fair anymore, then give yourself the time that you deserve to work through these things so that you can get to the person that you really are and the life that you really want, instead of the person that you became because of the abuse, and the life that you have because the roles or the subconscious programs that were forced on you. You don't have to stay in them, but you do have to be willing to do something about them. Which, by the way, if you don't want to do that alone, make sure you check out the Thriver School of Transformation, because we're a group of people that meet live weekly. Every week, we go through all of the things that I talk about on my channel. We find ways to put it into practice and move forward, but we do it together, so you're not alone. So if you're struggling and that's something you'd like, and you'd be interested in something like that, make sure you check out the description box below.